Welcome to Observation Lab. In this channel, we will explore various dimensions of philosophy, meditation, science, religion, and other aspects of life. This channel would be more like a podcast, although the episodes will be relatively shorter in their length. I will discuss ideas primarily from my own personal experiences, along with broader philosophical and scientific perspectives. In the beginning, I will try to keep things simple and will speak from my own personal observation. However, as we progress into deeper explorations of each topic, I will integrate and discuss relevant research findings and scholarly papers as needed. In the upcoming episodes, let's say the first season or perhaps the first chapter of our series, we will explore a range of topics, including the irony of thought and significance of awareness, the struggle within our minds, the mechanics of the thought process, the essence of what thoughts are, and the nature of thinking itself. I also will discuss some fascinating aspects of meditation, myths surrounding it, how to practice, and whether practice is necessary at all. However, before we get into topics such as meditation, it's essential to start with a fundamental understanding of thought and the thinking process. Typically, when people begin to meditate, they might start with yoga or other similar practices. Yet, once you sit down to meditate, a profound comprehension of your thought processes becomes crucial. I hope that by understanding our thoughts and how they operate, we can better observe them as they arise and disappear. After all, the name of this channel is Observation Lab. Well, you might argue that meditation is a process of understanding your thoughts, so you don't need to grasp something before you begin. While that's partly true, it's more like laying a foundation. Understanding this foundation makes it easier to grasp the whole concept of meditation more deeply. So let me first talk about the thought and thinking process. Reflecting on the thought process is quite interesting. With the growing excitement around artificial intelligence, particularly large language models, it seems that even computers and other machines are capable of thinking. To a certain degree, we can draw parallels between these models and various facets of our own cognitive processes. Our thoughts are shaped by our backgrounds, experiences, education, and so on. As individuals, we observe these thoughts, identifying as the I or the observer. However, a challenge arises when we recognize that I or observer is itself a product of thought. This presents a fascinating dilemma. It's difficult to observe the I or to observe the observer. This adds an extra layer of complexity to understanding thoughts and the process of thinking. Consider this scenario. Maybe you have replayed a conversation from a party with your spouse, friend, or family in your mind. It could have been a trivial or unpleasant exchange that you revisit over and over again. Think about how tedious it would be if you repeated that same story to someone multiple times. Yet, the mind continues to spin these narratives, which is both amusing and peculiar. Initially, the mind creates an illusion about the body, incorporating one's background, education, and experiences and so on, and assumes all this composes the self. This thinking process then begins to represent and protect this illusory self, which we might call the illusory self. Interestingly, this might be where thoughts start to mislead, believing they can solve any problem. It's quite fascinating how our mind attempts to manage thoughts. Imagine it like working with a computer where adding a new folder is intended to solve an issue in another folder. However, it doesn't quite work like that. One folder cannot inherently fix problems in another. Similarly, consider a blackboard where you sketch out numbers, equations, or drawings. If you dislike one of the drawings, the mind's instinct might be to erase it by scribbling over it or by adding new elements to distract from it. This analogy extends to how we handle our thoughts. Our mind acts as if it can simply erase or adjust the images on the metaphorical blackboard of our consciousness. Among the myriad of thoughts that fill our minds, some pleasant, others unpleasant ones, the mind often seeks to remove the unpleasant ones. Yet, the method it employs is peculiar. It tries to override or replace these existing thoughts. What it often overlooks is that it's not equipped with an eraser. Instead of clearing the previous thoughts or images, it merely layers more on top. This action might complicate matters more than simplify them, as the mind cannot truly erase thoughts. It can only cover them up with others. The problem arises when thoughts begin to believe they can act independently without realizing they are merely contributing to the existing collection. Some people might think they are fully aware of their thoughts and can control their thinking process. Ironically, this awareness itself can just be another thought, an illusion of control. In reality, thoughts continue to propagate, often without our conscious recognition, and this cycle is relentless. Understanding the limitations of thoughts is crucial. While they're essential for everyday activities, planning purposes, creative activities, and so on, they also strive to protect the illusory self they create. The self-preservation is just a projection of the mind, a projection that seems very, very real to us. It's important to grasp these concepts before delving into meditation. Sometimes thoughts persuade us that they can solve certain problems or that they can manage without our conscious effort, but this is seldom the case. I recall an old story about Mahasiddha, a great adept. There are different versions of this story, but I'll share one of them. Mahasiddha was approached by someone seeking a mantra to become an adept hunter like him. The Siddha agreed to share a mantra but instructed the man not to think of monkeys while using it. Of course, as soon as the man laughed, all he could think about was monkeys. The story goes that the man, instructed by the monk, or let's say Mahasiddha, not to think of monkeys, found himself unable to think of anything else. Everywhere he looked, even in his own reflection, he saw monkeys. Overwhelmed by these persistent thoughts, he returned to the Siddha, admitting his struggle. He realized he could not become the hunter he aspired to be because his mind was overrun with thoughts of monkeys. This story illustrates the subtle and often humorous nature of our thinking processes. It highlights the need for humility and a recognition of our thoughts' inherent limitations. By acknowledging these boundaries, we can approach problems and personal growth with a more grounded and realistic perspective. It's fascinating, isn't it? The more you try to avoid a thought, the more persistent it becomes. This brings us to an interesting question. Is there something beyond thought? Something more intelligent? Thoughts themselves try to identify this alternative, but it's all still within the realm of thought. We think we are using our thoughts differently after careful observation, but often it's just the same old cycle repeating. Alright, I'll continue discussing this topic and expanding on it in the next episode. Thank you for being here. I hope to see you next time.